Top 10 Secrets and Mysteries. Mysteries of Sacred Texts. Written documents are the memory of mankind. People have been recording their knowledge through text for some 10,000 years. And many preserved texts pertain to the sacred and to what we today would consider myths and legends. In this episode, we take a glimpse at the ancient knowledge in these texts and explore the pages we've only recently begun to understand and which still remain a mystery. The Book of the Dead. Some 3,500 years ago, the ancient Egyptians believed that in order to enter the afterlife, it was first necessary to travel through the underworld. This was a dangerous journey, and spells, charms, passwords, and magic formulas from the Book of the Dead helped the deceased to navigate or even cheat their way to the afterlife. Some spells had to be written on particular objects or body parts. One spell asks the Shapti figurines that were placed in the tomb to work for the deceased in the afterlife. These spells were essential for achieving eternal happiness. One mistake and their journey would be at risk.
This is the biggest mummy, the tomb that we found, that contained maybe like 40 mummies, and we found here many mummies with bracelets and necklaces and pottery and frames like temples.
To exist in the afterlife, it was also necessary to have an eternal body. This is how the custom of drying dead bodies in the desert began. Later, the practice developed into mummification. All internal organs, except for the heart, were removed from the body and stored separately. The heart was weighed in front of the god Osiris, and spells written on scarabs were placed over the heart to help the deceased conceal their secrets from him. The texts used during this process were often personalized for the deceased, with different choices taken from various lists of spells. No two copies of the Book of the Dead are the same, therefore, and its spells were never all written in one place. This means we can never be certain we found every spell that was ever used. Many more tombs probably still lie buried under the desert, guarding the secrets of immortality. The Torah. The Torah is the very substance of divine revelation to Israel and of God's guidance for mankind. An integral part of the Torah is the Kabbalah, which can be traced back some 2,000 years. The Kabbalah is one of the most misunderstood elements in Judaism today. Many claim it to be the dark side of Judaism and that it teaches black magic. But in fact, the principal idea of the Kabbalah is that one is to become completely infused with the Torah. It provides a way to reach God. Many people use the Kabbalah as a way of teaching, or use its symbolism in tarot cards and other forms of divination and magic that were never part of the original Jewish teachings. Does that mean there is no magic in the Kabbalah at all? A great number of Jewish stories could easily be described as magical. One such story tells of a man who created a being out of clay and brought it to life. This is the story of the Rabbi Judah Lev Bezalel, who created the Golem of Prague. But is this just a story? Accounts of artificial creations made by Jewish sages appeared as early as the 6th century AD. Some theologians even believe that Adam was made as a golem and became human only after God breathed life and soul into him. The mystery of the cathedrals. But not all texts that have the potential to hold incredible secrets are ancient. At the beginning of the 20th century, a number of influential texts emerged. Among these was a book by the grand alchemist Fulcanelli, The Mystery of the Cathedrals. It was published in 1926 in Paris, but the author remained in obscurity. Only his apprentices had ever met him, and many believe he may not have existed at all. According to Fulcanelli, some of the greatest alchemic secrets were passed down from ancient Greece and Egypt by means of the Gothic cathedrals, their layout and decorations teeming with hermetic symbols. Fulcanelli focuses on the cathedrals at Bourges and Amiens and Notre Dame in Paris. Supposedly, it's on the facade of Notre Dame where instructions on how to create the Philosopher's Stone are encoded. This stone is sought after by all alchemists, a legendary substance which can turn base metals into gold and grant immortality. The link to ancient Egypt is clearest in the symbolism of the Black Madonnas, which survived in some Christian churches. Fulcanelli traces their origin back to Isis, a 4,500-year-old Egyptian goddess, once worshipped everywhere from England to Afghanistan. For the alchemists, the Madonnas symbolized the prima materia, or first matter, the material required for the creation of the Philosopher's Stone. But Fulcanelli believed that transmutation and immortality weren't the main purposes of the stone. The greatest change is, in fact, the spiritual transformation that takes place in the alchemists themselves. Tao Te Ching. The Tao Te Ching is the foundational text of Taoism, the Chinese philosophical and religious tradition. Its authorship is attributed to the sage Lao Tzu, who is said to have written it around 600 BC. Most religions urge their devotees to embrace the good and reject the evil, but Taoism sees these moral qualities as two extremes of a single spectrum and seek a balance between the two. The idea is also expressed as two complementary forces, yin and yang. Taoist religion aims to enhance vitality by living in harmony with nature's ever-changing balance. This goal has led to the rise of legends about Taoist masters learning how to extend their lives indefinitely, or how to fly or become invisible. This is why some Taoists were considered magicians. Interestingly, the knowledge contained in the Tao Te Ching and other books has been taken seriously by many modern scientists. In 1975, Fritjof Capra, a young Austrian physicist, published a best-selling book called The Tao of Physics. Capra saw striking parallels between the teachings of several Eastern religions, including Taoism, and modern theories of subatomic physics, especially quantum mechanics. Today, subatomic particles are studied at CERN's scientific research facilities near Geneva, using the world's largest particle accelerator. Scientists recently confirmed the existence of the Higgs boson, a subatomic particle believed to be essential for the understanding of the structure of matter. Is it possible that knowledge about the principles of the universe enabled Taoist masters to somehow manipulate reality? Vedas. The Vedas are considered the oldest writings of Hinduism. They consist of 4 ancient texts written in Sanskrit. The oldest dates from around 1500 BC to 1200 BC. Many Hindus believe that the Vedas were not composed by humans. Instead, they were either taught to sages by the Creator, or they revealed themselves to the sages directly. This belief is supported by the fact that the Vedas are full of descriptions of an advanced civilization which had what appear to be weapons of mass destruction at its disposal. The Vedas also contain information about the universe that we learned only recently. The Nobel Prize-winning physicist Erwin Schrödinger, for example, was influenced by the Vedas. What's interesting is that one of the Vedas might offer a possible explanation for the Bermuda Triangle, where a number of aircraft and ships have disappeared in mysterious circumstances. A number of theories have been proposed, but none of them has been conclusive. This is why many attribute the disappearances to paranormal activity, or even extraterrestrials. The Veda in question adds an interesting piece to the puzzle. It states that the Earth gave birth to the planet Mars, and when Mars was separating from its mother, the Earth was injured and became imbalanced. As a remedy, 2 divine physicians, the Ashwini Kumaras, poured iron into the triangular-shaped wound, fixing the Earth in its current position. The triangular-shaped wound became the Bermuda Triangle, and the iron chunk worked like a giant magnet deep under the ocean floor, causing disappearances and other unexplained phenomena. Will science one day be able to use knowledge from the Vedas to explain the mysteries of the Bermuda Triangle? The Quran. The Quran is the sacred text of Islam, and for all Muslims, the very word of God, revealed to the Prophet Muhammad in the 7th century. Like Christians and the Bible, Muslims too search for marks of divinity in the Quran, and some believe they've found them. It was Rashid Khalifa who discovered the Quran code in the early 1970s. He used a computer to translate the Quran into English, which revealed mathematical patterns in the frequencies of all the unexplained initials at the beginning of certain chapters. Later, he discovered that the pattern extends much further into the book, and that it's based on the number 19. Had Khalifa stumbled upon something that could reveal the book's origins? The fact that he was later murdered for his teachings only adds to the mystery. But some people believe that holy books hold not only secret patterns, but also enigmatic references to lost cities. One such city is Iram of the Pillars. The Quran mentions Iram, and legend has it that it vanished in a terrible sandstorm as punishment for the sins of its inhabitants. Many simply take this as a morality tale, but in the early 1990s, a team led by Nicholas Clapp announced that they'd found a lost city hidden beneath the sands of southern Arabia, known as the lost city of Ubar. Could this be the same city that's mentioned in the Quran? Another possibility is that the team stumbled upon Omanum Emporium, known from the ancient map of Arabia. We'll probably never be sure if Iram of the Pillars truly existed, or if the Quran code proves its divine authorship. Nevertheless, the Quran remains one of the greatest sacred texts in the world, and a precious source of knowledge about our history. The Mahabharata. This epic poem from ancient India tells a story about a war of succession. Although it only appeared in its present form in around 400 BC, it shows the evolution of Hinduism reaching back some 800 years before that. But the Mahabharata also contains information, hidden in a number of myths, about something quite unexpected. The poem is full of descriptions of aircraft, similar to modern descriptions of UFOs, and also of many technologies we've only very recently invented, such as the telephone and television. The poem also tells of a vast, raging war, and mentions many different types of weapons, some of which are eerily similar to modern weapons of mass destruction. Is it possible that these ancient texts are describing the use of nuclear weapons? When J. Robert Oppenheimer, the American physicist and the scientific director of the Manhattan Project, witnessed the first successful explosion of a nuclear bomb, a bomb he had helped to create, he quoted a passage from the Bhagavad Gita, a part of the Mahabharata. "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." According to Charles Berlitz, Oppenheimer was once asked by a student at Rochester University if the test bomb that had exploded at Alamogordo bombing and gunnery range during the Manhattan Project had been the first. He answered, "Well, yes, in modern times, of course." Many people believe he was referring to the nuclear-like weapon mentioned in the Mahabharata. Was this all simply a misunderstanding caused by a misreading of the Mahabharata, or is it possible that ancient civilizations waged atomic wars? The Teachings of Don Juan. The hero of the best-selling book The Teachings of Don Juan, A Yaqui Way of Knowledge, by the anthropologist Carlos Castaneda, is not the famous fictional libertine and womanizer of the same name. Published in 1968, the book describes Castaneda's experiences with cocktails of hallucinogens. As the alleged apprentice of Don Juan Matus, a shaman from the Yaqui tribe in Mexico, Castaneda was able to take a glimpse into the mystical powers of the native people. The secrets were revealed to him through rituals involving the use of peyote, the secret cactus used by some northern Native Americans, probably best known from Aldous Huxley's description in The Doors of Perception. His spiritual journey led Castaneda into a world beyond ours, into a world of what he called non-ordinary reality.
Best be remembered, I think, as the man who introduced drugs to sort of proto-hippies, who then turned around and decided drugs weren't the most important thing. And then when he'd written, encompassing a period of about 10 years, he warped time so that he could insert other books into periods that he'd supposedly already written about.
Later, however, many people challenged the veracity of his ex-wife, for example, said she believed Don Juan to be a completely fictitious character. While some consider him a father of the New Age movement, others believe he's one of its greatest charlatans. Nevertheless, his books became international bestsellers and influenced generations of readers seeking answers to some of life's ultimate questions. Is there such a thing as objective reality? Or is reality simply our perception? And is it possible to break through the limitations of our ordinary consciousness? The Masnavi. Sufism represents the mystical path within Islam. For some 1,300 years, since the time of Muhammad himself, Sufis have been seeking the truth of divine love and knowledge. One of the most important texts for the Sufis, and arguably after the Quran, the second most influential text in Islam, is the Masnavi, written some 750 years ago. It was written by Rumi, the greatest Sufi mystic and poet to write in the Persian language. The complete title of the book translates as Rhyming Couplets of Deep Spiritual Meaning. It was not uncommon for Sufi mystics to lay down their teachings in long poems, but with 6 volumes and some 26,000 couplets, the Masnavi is one of the longest single-author mystical poems ever written. Rumi is also closely connected to the tradition of Sufi whirling. Some even believe the tradition originated from him. What is certain is that Rumi himself whirled while composing his poetry, which he dictated. I search for you everywhere, I look for you everywhere, but I only found you within myself. So the idea of the whirling is that the dancer does not see anything but God, who is inside of him. He, the dancer, is the beginning, the center, and the sun. The Sufi mystics, known as the dervishes, are able to attain what appear to be hypnotic states. Their whirling dance is full of symbolic meaning. It is, in fact, a physically active form of meditation, connecting the mind, the heart, and the body. Modern science has long recognized that revolving is a central concept of matter and a fundamental condition of our existence. Think of an electron revolving around the nucleus of an atom, or a moon revolving around its planet. But long before this, the whirling dervishes believed that through their ritual dance they were consciously revolving in harmony with all of nature. This, they say, testifies to the existence of a single creator who built rotation into everything that is. The Bible. According to the well-known story in Genesis, the first book of the Bible, which dates back some 3,000 years and is sacred to both Judaism and Christianity, God decided to destroy wicked humankind in a great flood. But first, he instructed a man called Noah, a righteous man, to build a boat, the Ark, so a chosen few could survive. Noah's Ark still presents one of the greatest biblical mysteries. The only definite clue to the whereabouts of its remains is a single verse in Genesis, which tells us that the Ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. Many searches have been conducted on Mount Ararat in Turkey, even though this particular peak wasn't associated with the Ark until the 10th century BC. Many people claim to have found Noah's Ark, but no one has ever delivered conclusive evidence, and the fact that the region is a military zone has made the search more difficult. All the discussions about where exactly Noah settled are not correct, as all mountainous territory looks the same, and every region had its own Noah, because people lived on top of mountains, and gradually they were coming down to valleys to start agriculture. The mythical flood, which also appears in many other cultures all over the world, was not the only biblical cataclysm, however. God also destroyed the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, this time by fire. This event must have taken place near the Dead Sea, as according to the Bible, Abraham viewed the destruction from a point to the west. Archaeologists have identified several possible sites, such as the towns of Bab ed-Dara and Numeria, the only known inhabited towns close to the Dead Sea between 3000 and 1000 BC. Both towns were located directly above a fault line and were abandoned for reasons that have never been explained. More recently, another city-state was discovered near the Dead Sea. After an enormous explosion over the city, caused perhaps by a massive meteor, the area was left uninhabited for 700 years. The problem here is that the site lies not west but northeast of the Dead Sea. Is it still possible that this could be the remains of the doomed cities? We have peered into the mysteries of some of the most important written documents the world has ever known. But still, huge quantities of forgotten books remain hidden, collecting dust on shelves. As there are thousands of languages in the world which have never been written down and are dying out rapidly, how much more knowledge has already been lost?